She accidentally kissed a stranger. But he was a billionaire CEO, and he couldn't forget her eyes. She only meant to deliver a tray of wine. But instead, she accidentally kissed a total stranger. What she didn't know? He was a billionaire CEO, and he would spend the rest of his days trying to find the girl who ran away, without even telling him her name. But when he finally found her, working in a tiny flower shop, hiding behind someone else's apron, he discovered she was hiding much more than just a beautiful face. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. It all started with the wrong door. The hallway was nearly empty, quiet except for the muffled sound of jazz echoing from the gala downstairs. Ella clutched the silver tray close to her chest, her cheeks still flushed from the chaos in the kitchen. She had just started her shift as a catering server for a last-minute booking at the prestigious Altman Tower, a place that, until tonight, she'd only seen from the sidewalk. She turned a corner, trying to find the wine cellar. That's where the catering manager told her to drop off the glasses. Her heels clicked nervously on the marble floor, her hand brushing against the cool wall as she walked faster, trying to seem like she belonged. Then she saw it. A dark wood door, slightly ajar, with soft golden light spilling out. Assuming it was the wine cellar, Ella stepped inside without knocking. And that was her first mistake. Inside, a man stood by the window, tall, sharply dressed, in a black tailored suit. He was talking on the phone, his voice low and smooth like velvet. "I don't care if they double the offer. I'm not selling," he said. "Tell them the deal's off." Ella froze, realizing instantly she wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't a cellar. It was a penthouse office, high above the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows and bookshelves lined with awards. A glass of untouched whiskey sat on the desk beside a silver nameplate. Julian Wyatt, CEO, Wyatt Holdings. Ella's breath caught in her throat. Julian turned just as she stepped back, her elbow knocking into the tray. A wine glass toppled and shattered on the marble floor. He hung up immediately. Their eyes met. Her tray slipped. She lunged to catch it, but her foot hit a shard of glass, and before she could stop herself, she stumbled forward and crashed right into his chest. The tray clanged to the ground, but neither of them moved. For a moment, the world outside those windows disappeared. The only thing Ella could see were his eyes, deep green, clear, startled. And then, somehow, impossibly, her lips brushed against his. It wasn't a kiss meant to happen. It was a stumble, a mistake, a brief, breathless collision of fate. She pulled away like she'd been struck. I'm so sorry," she gasped, her voice shaking. "I thought this was the cellar. I didn't mean, please, But Julian didn't say anything. He just looked at her, as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. The soft curve of her jaw, the blush on her cheeks, the way her eyes, sea glass green, held a kind of innocence he hadn't seen in years. Ella turned and ran before he could speak. She didn't wait to hear him call out. She didn't even hear the security guard asking where she was going. She only knew one thing. She had to get out of there before she lost her job. But Julian, he couldn't move, couldn't think. He touched his lips once, confused, curious, his heart beating harder than it had in a long, long time. He didn't believe in fate. Not really. Until now. The next morning, Ella woke in her tiny studio apartment with a tight knot in her chest. She stared at the ceiling, trying to convince herself it wasn't a big deal. So what if she kissed the CEO of one of the biggest companies in New York? It wasn't even a kiss. More like a panic collision. Still, She felt her stomach twist every time she remembered his face. Not the sharp suit or the expensive watch, just his eyes. How quiet they'd gone. How he hadn't yelled, hadn't laughed, just watched her run like she'd broken something. She groaned, burying her head in her pillow. She wasn't supposed to be at that event. The catering company called her that afternoon because someone else got sick. It was one night, just one mistake. He probably forgot her already. She just had to get through her shift at the flower shop today and pretend last night never happened. Meanwhile, Julian sat in his corner office, phone ignored, contracts untouched. His team had been knocking on his door all morning. He barely noticed. He was doing something he never did. He was scrolling through the guest list. But she wasn't on it. No employee badge, no staff records, no last name. Just a blurry security cam freeze frame of her running down the hallway, her hair in soft waves, a cream-colored sweater falling off one shoulder, tray in hand. Where did she go? Why couldn't he stop thinking about her? Julian closed his laptop, stood, and walked to the window. Somewhere in this city, the girl who kissed him by accident was walking around like nothing had happened, and he couldn't forget her eyes. That afternoon, the bell above Bloom and Stem chimed softly. Ella was trimming roses behind the counter, her apron dusted with tiny flecks of pollen, when she looked up and nearly dropped the scissors. He was standing in the doorway. Dark suit, same eyes, same impossibly calm presence. Julian Wyatt. Here, in her flower shop? Her mind went blank. He stepped inside. "I didn't know your name," he said quietly, "but I remembered your eyes." Ella swallowed hard. "Mr. Wyatt, I'm sorry about last night. I shouldn't have—" "I'm not here to complain," he interrupted, voice gentle. "I'm here because I don't want to forget what happened." The world stood still. Behind her, the radio hummed. Outside, the rain tapped softly on the window. Inside, Julian looked at her like she was the first moment of peace he'd had in years. "I'd like to buy flowers," he added after a beat. "And if you don't mind, maybe a name too." Ella's cheeks turned bright pink. She wanted to say no. She wanted to stay invisible, keep her job, her life simple. But something in the way he stood there, like he wasn't just chasing a moment, but something real, made her heart crack open just enough. She cleared her throat. "I'm Ella," she said softly. "Ella Moore." Julian smiled, not the sharp smile from business magazines. A different one, a quiet one. "Nice to meet you, Ella Moore." But just as she reached for the bouquet, a voice called from the back of the shop, "Ella, there's a guy from last night's event on the phone. Says it's urgent about you." Her eyes widened. Julian looked at her. Something in her expression changed. Fear. Panic. She looked like someone who had a secret. And suddenly, the moment between them wasn't so simple anymore. Ella's fingers tightened around the bouquet. From the back of the flower shop, her manager's voice called again. "He says he's from the event last night. Wants to know if you're the same girl who walked into the CEO's office. Says it might involve security." Her heart dropped. Julian was still standing there, silent, watching her. Ella forced a tight smile, barely holding it together. I should take that call," she said softly, already backing toward the hallway. She disappeared behind the curtain, out of sight. Julian stayed where he was. His eyes drifted to a shelf lined with violets, but his thoughts were spinning. She's afraid. But why? In the tiny break room, Ella snatched up the phone. "Hello? Ella Moore?" the voice asked. A man, clipped, anxious, professional. "This is Greg. I managed the gala last night. Look, I need to be upfront with you. You walked into a private office. the CEO's suite, and there are security cameras in there. We've reviewed the footage. Ella went cold. I didn't know it was his office, she said quickly. I thought it was the wine cellar. I get that. But you also kissed him. Her knees almost gave out. It was an accident. I tripped. I didn't mean to. We believe you. But the issue is, someone could leak the footage. Julian hasn't said anything yet, but if it goes public, we're exposed. Our legal team might need to draft a statement in case it turns into a scandal. Ella's voice was barely a whisper. A scandal? We're just trying to cover all bases, the man said, already distracted. Look, I'll make a note that it was an accident and that there was no intent. That should protect you. Just stay quiet, okay? Click. The line went dead. Ella stared at the phone in her hand. Her hands were shaking. It had only been 24 hours, and already the walls were closing in. She didn't want this. She didn't ask for it. All she'd wanted was a quiet job, a paycheck, a way to pay for her mom's medical bills without getting swallowed by New York. She took a deep breath and returned to the front. Julian was still there. His eyes met hers the second she came back into view. I'm sorry, she said, trying to smile. It was a work thing. Julian didn't press, but he noticed her hands were trembling. Her voice slightly different now, like she was holding something back. Everything all right? He asked gently. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, it's fine. He didn't believe her. I meant what I said earlier, he added. I'm not here to cause trouble. She looked up at him. Her eyes were so full of light and fear and exhaustion all at once. He didn't know how someone could look so soft and so guarded at the same time. He held up the bouquet she had put together. I'll take this one. She hesitated, then nodded and began wrapping it. Her fingers fumbled slightly with the ribbon. Is it for someone special? She asked, trying to sound casual. Julian tilted his head. Maybe. I haven't decided yet. She handed him the flowers. Well, whoever she is, she's lucky. Julian's gaze lingered on her face. I'm the lucky one. I got to meet her by accident. Ella swallowed. He paid, then paused as he reached the door. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to say something else. Ask her out. Tell her something real. But instead, he smiled once, small, unreadable, and left. Ella stood frozen behind the counter, bouquet money still in hand, heart racing for reasons she couldn't fully name. She didn't want to be seen by someone like him, because if he kept looking, he might see everything she'd worked so hard to hide. Julian stepped into his car, the bouquet beside him on the seat. Where to, sir? The driver asked. He didn't answer immediately. Nowhere, he said finally. Just drive. He needed to think. About her. About the way she looked when she said she was fine. About the voice on the phone this morning that warned him something was off with last night's footage. That if anyone found out who she was, her life could get pulled into the headlines. He didn't want that. Not for her. But something told him. There was more to Ella Moore than just a pretty face and a shy smile in a flower shop. And he wanted to know what it was. That night, Ella sat by her tiny apartment window, the city glittering outside like it belonged to someone else. On the table was a small envelope from the hospital. Another unpaid bill. She sighed, pulling her knees up to her chest. She'd worked 2 jobs since last year. One to pay rent, one to help with her mother's treatments. There was no room for distractions, no space for mistakes, and certainly no place for a billionaire with green eyes and a smile that could wreck her defenses in seconds. She picked up her phone. There was a message from an unknown number. I hope I didn't make your day harder. J. Ella's heart jumped. She stared at the screen, and then slowly her thumb hovered over the keyboard. But before she could respond, the screen flashed with another alert. New email. Wyatt Holdings. Press inquiry about unidentified catering girl. Subject: urgent. Her face went pale. This wasn't over. Not even close. Ella sat frozen, the glow of her phone casting a pale light over her face. The subject line burned in her mind. Press inquiry. Unidentified catering girl. Linked to CEO Julian Wyatt. She clicked it. The email was from the catering company's public relations manager. Short, cold, and terrifying. The tabloids had caught wind of an anonymous employee being seen in a compromising moment with Julian. No names were listed, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. They wanted to identify her. They were looking for her. Ella's heart thundered in her chest. She had no lawyer, no agent. She couldn't afford to have her face spread online like some scandal. She barely had enough to pay for groceries that week. She didn't even do anything wrong. Except trip and kiss him. Accidentally. On camera. She paced the tiny apartment, her fingers gripping her sweater sleeves. There was a knock at the door. She froze. Then it came again, softer this time. Ella peeked through the peephole, her stomach twisted. Julian. She opened the door halfway, holding the chain in place. "How did you find me?" she whispered. He gave her a sheepish look. "I called the flower shop, told them I forgot to ask you something important. The owner gave me your address, said it was for flower delivery." Ella didn't smile. "Don't do that again," she said quietly. He nodded, immediately apologetic. "I know you're scared," he said gently. "But I think the story's going to get out whether we like it or not." "I'm not a story," she snapped, her voice cracking. Julian's expression softened. "I know." Silence stretched between them. The chain on the door stayed in place. "I just wanted to ask you something," he said, "before this gets worse." She didn't respond. "Why were you working that event? Your name wasn't on the employee list." Ella hesitated. Then, slowly, she unlatched the chain and opened the door. She didn't invite him in. "I was covering for a friend who was sick. I needed the extra cash." Julian studied her, the shadows under her eyes, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her apartment was clean but painfully small. "You don't have to explain," he said. "But if I can help—" "No!" she cut in fast. "You can't. This isn't your mess to fix." Julian took a step back, surprised by the sharpness in her voice. Ella caught herself. Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. "I don't want your charity or your protection. I just want this to go away." He nodded, quietly. "All right." He started to turn, but then paused. "I wasn't trying to play hero, Ella. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. Not because of the kiss, but because of the look in your eyes right before you ran." She didn't say anything. "I know what it's like," he added, "to feel like you don't belong in someone else's world." Ella's eyes met his, guarded, tired, and trembling. "But you do," he said, and then he left, without waiting for an answer. The next morning, Ella woke up to 20 missed calls from the catering company, one from her landlord, and a new headline making the rounds on social media. "Mystery girl kisses billionaire CEO. Who is she?" Security footage leaked. Wyatt Holdings refuses comment. She clicked the link, and there it was. The video. Grainy, distant, but clear enough. The stumble, the fall, the kiss, her face. Her name wasn't there. But it was only a matter of time. She grabbed her coat, tied her hair back, and rushed out the door. Julian stood in his penthouse office, phone buzzing non-stop. PR teams, lawyers, board members, stockholders. Everyone wanted answers. He gave them none. Instead, he stared at the freeze frame on his computer screen. Ella, eyes wide, in his arms. Then a knock on his door broke the silence. It was his sister, Claire. "You're trending," she said flatly, stepping inside. "I know." She folded her arms. "Is it true?" "What?" "That you're chasing some girl you kissed by accident?" Julian said nothing. Claire sighed and sat down. "You've never cared about a headline in your life. So, what is it about her?" Julian looked out the window. "She didn't ask me for anything." Claire frowned. "That's it?" She was scared and kind and honest. He turned to face her. She looked at me like I was just a man in a room, not a billionaire, not a CEO, just a man. Claire stared at him. Then, quietly, "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to find a way to protect her." Claire stood. "Then you'd better do it fast. Because the world is already trying to turn her into something she's not." Across town, Ella ducked into the only place she felt safe. Her mother's hospital room. She sat quietly beside the bed, watching the woman sleep. Her mother's breathing was soft, machines blinking steadily in the background. Ella reached for her hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Behind her, a nurse entered with a tray. "Ella?" she asked gently. "There's a man at the front desk. Says he wants to pay for your mom's care." Ella stood abruptly. "Who?" But she already knew. She walked into the hallway, heart pounding, and there he was, Julian, holding a folder. No cameras, no reporters, just him. "I told you not to do this," she said, her voice cracking. He nodded. "And I listened. This isn't for you." He held up the folder. "It's for her." Ella looked at it, a prepaid agreement for 3 months of full treatment coverage. She stared at him in disbelief. "You don't even know us." "I know what it's like to lose someone slowly," he said. "I lost my dad to cancer when I was 17. We couldn't afford hospice care. I never got to say goodbye." Ella blinked, stunned. This part of him, quiet, broken, human, caught her off guard. Julian stepped forward. "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not trying to impress you. But if there's even a small chance this can make things easier, let me." Ella's eyes filled. She looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "Why are you really doing this?" Julian met her gaze. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you ran." Ella stood there, breathless. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, her phone buzzed. Another text alert. "Breaking. Identity of mystery girl exposed. Full name and photo released." She turned the screen around, and there it was. Her name, her photo. Her entire life laid bare. She didn't even have time to respond, because someone was already knocking on the hospital entrance. Paparazzi. The glass doors rattled as flashes lit up the hospital lobby. Ella stood frozen, clutching her phone, her mother's chart still under her arm. Nurses scrambled to cover the windows as voices outside shouted her name. "Ella Moore! Were you involved with Julian Wyatt before the gala? Is it true you seduced him? Are you dating the billionaire CEO?" Julian stepped between her and the doors. His face stayed calm, but his jaw was tight. "Come with me," he said, low and firm. "I can't leave my mom. She's safe here, but you're not." Security had already started blocking reporters, but someone had slipped past. A camera pointed straight at Ella. She ducked behind Julian instinctively. overwhelmed. A nurse whispered something to a guard. Moments later, a side exit opened. Julian took her hand without asking, and they ran. The black SUV waited at the curb, engine humming. As soon as the doors closed, the driver took off. Ella pressed her back against the seat, breathing hard. "I didn't ask for this," she said, her voice raw. "I know," Julian replied softly. "This is my life they're tearing apart. Not a headline, not a scandal." He didn't try to defend the media or explain it away. He just watched her quietly, like someone who truly understood the damage that silence couldn't fix. Finally, she asked, "Where are we going?" "To my place," he said. "You'll be safe there." She shook her head. "I'm not hiding in your penthouse like some dirty secret." Julian turned to face her. "You're not a secret, Ella. You never were." But she didn't answer. She just turned her head toward the window and let the city blur into colorless streaks. The Wyatt penthouse was high above the chaos, the world below muffled by glass and space and quiet. Ella stepped in slowly, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She felt like a misplaced brushstroke in a perfect painting. Floor-to-ceiling windows, an open fireplace, framed magazine covers featuring Julian. Awards lined the shelves. Everything screamed success. Except him. Julian had changed out of his suit. Black shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked softer now, more like the man from the flower shop than the one on the magazine covers. She sat at the edge of a leather sofa, arms crossed tightly. He returned with tea and a blanket. "Is this how you treat all your scandals?" she asked bitterly. Julian gave a small laugh. "You're not a scandal." "Then what am I?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Something I didn't know I was missing." Ella blinked. She didn't know what to say to that. So she stayed quiet. And then finally, she said what had been building inside since everything began. "You don't know me." "I'm trying to," he said. She stood, pacing now. "I'm not someone who fits into this world, Julian. I don't have a PR team or designer clothes or lawyers ready to spin things when life gets ugly. I have bills, a sick mom. I live in a fourth-floor walk-up with peeling wallpaper, and neighbors who scream at each other every night." He didn't flinch. "I know." She turned on him, angry now. "No, you don't. You see some sad, sweet story in your head. But the truth is, I'm not some wounded Cinderella waiting to be rescued. I've worked my entire life to stay afloat, and I don't need saving." "I never said you did," he said quietly. Ella stopped. The tension broke like glass. She sat down again, this time slower. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I just wanted a simple life." Julian nodded. "And I complicated it." She looked at him. "Why didn't you tell the press it was nothing? That I was no one?" His jaw tensed. "Because that's not the truth." Later that night, Ella sat alone in the guest room, staring out at the city lights. She'd taken a shower, worn the soft sweatshirt Claire had left behind on the couch. Everything smelled like pine and clean linen. Too perfect. Too far from her world. She didn't know how to feel. Part of her wanted to run, but another part of her didn't. Downstairs, Julian stood on the balcony, his phone pressed to his ear. "Shut it down," he said. "I don't care what they offer. I want the article pulled, her name off every site. And if anyone publishes that hospital photo, they'll deal with me personally." He hung up, jaw clenched. This wasn't business. This was personal. The next morning, Ella woke to find Claire in the kitchen making coffee. "Oh," Claire said with a smile. "You're up. Want some? It's stronger than Julian's morals." Ella gave a weak laugh. Claire leaned on the counter. "Listen," I know this is a lot. But just so you know, I think he really cares about you." Ella looked down. "He barely knows me." Claire shrugged. "Yeah, but in our family, that's how you know it's real. We don't care easily. Or at all, usually." There was a pause. Then Claire said quietly, "You should tell him the rest." Ella looked up sharply. Claire softened. "He's risking everything to protect you. You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest." Ella nodded slowly. "I want to. But if I do, he might not look at me the same." Claire tilted her head. "Or maybe he'll finally see the whole picture." That afternoon, Ella stood in Julian's office. She looked at him, really looked. Not the suit, not the reputation, just him. "I need to tell you something," she said. He stepped closer. "Okay." She swallowed. "The hospital bills aren't just for my mom." Julian blinked. "What do you mean?" Ella's voice cracked. "She has early-onset Alzheimer's. I've been her only caregiver since I was 19. I never went to college. I gave everything up to take care of her. The catering jobs, the flower shop. It's all I've had. And now, with my name out there, I'm scared I'm going to lose even that." Julian looked at her, stunned. Not because he pitied her, because he respected her. "You've been carrying that alone?" She nodded, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Julian took a step closer. "You're stronger than anyone I know." Ella covered her face, overwhelmed. "I didn't want you to see this part of me." "I'm glad I did." He reached out, gently pulling her into his arms. She let herself fall against his chest. Just for a moment, just this once. And then a buzz broke the silence. Julian's assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, there's someone from the press downstairs. They say they have proof this wasn't your first time seeing her." Julian froze. Ella pulled back. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The assistant added, "They're claiming you knew Ella before the kiss." Julian turned pale. Ella stared at him, and he said nothing. Julian stood still, the weight of the question hanging heavy in the room. Ella's voice was quiet, but shaken. "Is it true?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She took a step back. "Julian, did you know me before that night?" He finally nodded. "Once." Ella's breath hitched. "You never said anything." "I didn't know if I should," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd even remember." She stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" Julian looked away, jaw clenched, and then slowly, finally, he told her. 2 years ago. A quiet, downtown bookstore. He wasn't the CEO that day. Just a man looking for something real. Anything to remind him he hadn't turned into a machine. He found her in the poetry aisle. Ella was laughing with the cashier about a misprinted book of Pablo Neruda poems. Her voice was light. Her hair was pulled back in a messy braid. She didn't notice him standing there at first, and when she finally looked up, her eyes locked with his for less than 3 seconds. But something happened. She smiled at him. He smiled back. That was it. He bought a book he didn't need. Left. Never said a word. But he remembered her. Every detail. Back in the office, Ella sat down slowly. "You saw me once, in a bookstore, and remembered me for 2 years?" He nodded. "I know it sounds crazy, but I never forgot your face, your laugh, the way you were just there, like the rest of the world didn't matter." Ella let out a shaky breath. "You should have told me." "I know." "Why didn't you?" Julian walked toward the window, his voice softer now. "Because I didn't want to make you think I was chasing some fantasy. I didn't want to scare you off." "You lied." "I withheld," he said. Because for once, I wanted something to unfold naturally. And when you walked into that office that night, I thought maybe I was meant to find you again. Ella stood up. But you let me feel like I was just some accident. You were, he said, then quickly corrected himself. I mean, it was an accident, but it mattered to me. More than you know. She turned away, the hurt in her chest blooming fast. This whole time I thought you liked me for me, not some idea of me you built in your head 2 years ago. I do like you, the real you. You don't even know me. I'm trying to, he said, pleading now. Ella, please don't walk away. But she was already at the door, and this time, she didn't turn back. Outside, Ella's face was tight, unreadable. Her phone buzzed again. Another article, another headline. She didn't even click it. All she could think about was that moment in the bookstore, and how something that innocent had somehow turned into this. She walked for blocks, no plan, just noise and wind, and a city that didn't care if her world was falling apart. Her heart wasn't just breaking from what Julian did. It was breaking from the realization that maybe no one saw her clearly. Not even him. Julian watched from the window as her silhouette disappeared into the crowd. Claire appeared behind him, quiet. You told her? He nodded. Claire let out a breath. Well, honesty is great, but your timing still sucks. Julian didn't speak. Claire studied him. You really do love her, don't you? He turned slowly. I don't know if she'll ever believe me now. Claire shrugged. You've got 2 choices. Let her go, or prove you meant it. He ran a hand through his hair. How? Claire smirked. By doing something no billionaire ever does. He raised an eyebrow. Wait. That night, Ella curled up on her mother's hospital chair, hoodie pulled over her head. She didn't answer her texts, didn't open the flower shop app. She just sat there, holding her mom's frail hand in hers. Mom, she whispered, why does love always come with so much pain? The room was quiet except for the beeping machines. And then, softly, her mother stirred. Ella sat up quickly. Mom? Her mother blinked slowly. Then, in a voice weak but lucid, she whispered, Your dad used to say, the heart knows the truth before the head ever does. Ella's eyes filled with tears. It was the first thing her mother had said in days. She held her hand tighter, and suddenly, she didn't feel so alone. The next morning, Ella found a note under the door of her apartment. No envelope, just a single folded page. Inside, it read, I know I hurt you by not telling the whole truth. I'm sorry I let fear take over. I never meant to make you feel like you weren't enough just as you are. I don't want to chase a version of you. I want to know the real you. The messy, complicated, incredible you. I'll wait, if that's what it takes. Julian. There was a single pressed flower taped to the bottom. A violet. The same kind she kept on the shelf at the flower shop. She stood there for a long time, holding the paper to her chest, her heart racing, confused, overwhelmed, but no longer closed. But just as she reached for her phone to text him, the screen lit up with a new message. Unknown number. If you care about your mom, stay away from Julian Wyatt. He's hiding more than you think. Her hands went cold. What more was he hiding? The message stared back at her. If you care about your mom, stay away from Julian Wyatt. He's hiding more than you think. Ella sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding. She wanted to believe it was fake, a troll. Some anonymous internet troll trying to scare her. But it wasn't just the words. It was the tone, cold, specific, purposeful. She read it again, then again. Who would send something like that? And what could Julian possibly be hiding? Her stomach churned. Her eyes moved to the violet he'd left her. It used to mean comfort. Now it just looked like a question mark. Across the city, Julian sat in the back of a black town car, his assistant speaking urgently beside him. "The leak didn't come from inside the company," she said. "We traced the footage to a third-party security firm. But that's not the biggest problem." Julian looked up. "What is?" She handed him a file. "I think someone's trying to use your connection to Ella to push an old story back into the spotlight." He opened the file. His face went pale. A headline from years ago. A photo. And a name he hadn't heard in a long time. Back at the flower shop, Ella tried to act normal. The bell above the door chimed. Customers came in. Small orders. A birthday bouquet. Lavender bundles for someone's yoga studio. But her hands kept shaking as she tied ribbons. The message kept flashing in her mind. "He's hiding more than you think." She couldn't let it go. She picked up her phone, typed a single line. "What else should I know?" She stared at it, then pressed send. 30 seconds passed. Then a reply came. "Ask him about Catherine Hale." Ella frowned. She didn't recognize the name, but something about it made her chest tighten. She opened her laptop and typed the name. What she found made her blood run cold. Catherine Hale, age 24, died in accidental fall from rooftop. Alleged former girlfriend of billionaire Julian Wyatt. Wyatt never publicly commented on her death. Rumors of private settlement with Hale's family. Ella scrolled down, her hand to her mouth. The article was vague. Rumors, speculation, and a blurred photo of Julian leaving a hospital late at night. His face unreadable. He never talked about it. Never mentioned her. Ella sat back in her chair, stunned. She didn't know what hurt more. The story or the silence? Why hadn't he told her? Was this what the message warned her about? That evening, she stood in front of his office again. She didn't text, didn't warn him. She just showed up. The receptionist tried to stop her. "I'm sorry, Ms. Moore. He's in a meeting." "He'll see me," she said. Calm, but firm. And she was right. The moment Julian heard her name, he dropped everything. He met her in the hallway. "Ella," she held up her hand. "I just have one question." Julian nodded, cautious. Who was Catherine Hale? He froze. The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Ella's voice trembled. "Why didn't you ever mention her?" Julian took a slow breath. "Because I was afraid if I did, you'd think I was still haunted by her." He motioned toward his office. She followed, silent. He closed the door, then faced her fully. "She was someone I dated. Briefly. We met through a fundraiser my company sponsored. She was kind, funny, a little reckless. We had a few months together. Nothing serious. But..." He paused, his voice thickening. "She struggled with mental health, depression. I didn't realize how bad it was until it was too late." Ella's eyes softened slightly. "I was there the night she died," Julian admitted. "We had an argument. She'd been drinking. I left. And a few hours later, I got a call." His voice broke. She jumped. Silence filled the room. "I blamed myself for a long time," he said. "I paid for everything. Her funeral. Quietly helped her family. I never talked to the press. I never wanted it to become some public tragedy people would chew up and forget." Ella sat down slowly, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want her story to touch yours. You're not her, Ella. You're not broken. You're surviving, fighting. You light up every room you walk into." He knelt in front of her. "But now I realize, hiding it didn't protect you. It just made you doubt me." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She searched his face. He wasn't performing. He was aching. She whispered, "I don't want to be someone's second chance." "You're not," he said, meeting her eyes. "You're my first real one." Ella blinked. "Is there anything else I don't know?" He shook his head. "No secrets. Not anymore." Her chest rose and fell, her mind racing. She didn't know what to believe, only what she felt. But before she could respond, there was a loud knock. Julian's assistant burst in, face pale. "Sorry to interrupt, sir, but someone just showed up downstairs." "Who?" "A man named Peter Hale." Julian stiffened. "Catherine's brother?" The assistant nodded. "He says he wants to speak to Ella." Ella stood slowly, her hands clenched. "Why?" "He said," the assistant replied carefully, "Julian Wyatt destroyed one woman in my family. I won't let him ruin another." Julian stepped forward instantly. He's not getting near her. But Ella put a hand on his chest. "I want to hear what he has to say." Julian froze, their eyes locked. "Just once," she said. "Let me choose." And then she walked out, toward the man waiting in the lobby, toward a truth she wasn't sure she was ready for. Peter Hale stood in the marble lobby, jaw tight, hands in his coat pockets. He was older than the photo Julian kept in that closed folder. Dark eyes, same anger that had never faded. When Ella stepped out of the elevator, he didn't smile. "You're the girl," he said. "From the news, from the flower shop." Ella kept her voice calm. "You asked to see me." Peter nodded. "I just want to ask you something," he said, "before you fall for him completely." She stayed silent. "Has he told you everything? Or just what makes him look innocent?" "I know about Catherine," she said softly. "He told me himself." Peter blinked. Then, slowly, "Did he tell you they fought that night? That she begged him not to leave?" Ella nodded. Peter's voice grew sharper. "Did he tell you she wrote a letter before she jumped? And he never showed up to read it?" Ella's heart clenched. "No," she whispered. Peter pulled out a folded page, a photocopy, fragile from time. "She left this with me because she didn't trust he'd come back." Ella hesitated, then took it. She read the messy, rushed handwriting, the pain between the lines, Catherine's heartbreak, her guilt, her exhaustion, but also the part at the end. "Don't blame Julian. He didn't push me. I just didn't know how to hold on anymore. He tried." Ella looked up, eyes wide. Peter's jaw twitched. "I've hated him for so long. But sometimes I wonder if maybe she really meant that." Ella folded the letter carefully. "Why show this to me now?" she asked. Peter's voice cracked for the first time. "Because I don't want to see another woman fall apart trying to love someone like him." Ella's voice was steady now. "I'm not falling apart. I'm trying to love someone despite how much life has tried to break us." Peter stared at her, and, after a pause, he nodded once, then walked away. Upstairs, Julian was pacing. When Ella entered, he looked up, terrified she might be walking in to say goodbye. But she didn't speak right away. She just walked over, placed the letter in his hands, and said, "She forgave you." Julian read the words. His throat tightened. "I didn't deserve it." "You tried to help her," Ella said, "but you were young and scared." He looked at her now, something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not grief, not guilt, hope. Ella stepped closer. "I'm not Catherine, and you're not the man you were back then." He reached for her hand. "But if you ever lie to me again," she whispered, "I will walk away." Julian nodded. Deal. She smiled, a little, but her eyes were full of something deeper. Love. Worn and real. He leaned forward, but this time didn't kiss her. He waited. Ella closed the space between them. Soft, certain, not an accident, not a mistake, a choice. Weeks later, the story had died down. No more paparazzi, no more headlines. Julian never gave an interview. Ella went back to the flower shop, back to trimming stems and arranging colors and listening to strangers describe the people they loved. But sometimes, he'd show up with coffee and stand at the counter like a regular customer. And when their hands touched, it still felt like that first time. Except this time, it wasn't confusion. It was home. One afternoon, as they walked through Central Park together, he asked her something unexpected. "Do you think things happen for a reason?" Ella smiled faintly. "No, but I think sometimes life gives us the same person twice." Julian looked at her, and she added, "So we can get it right." They kept walking, hand in hand, through a world that no longer felt like it was chasing them. No headlines, no fear, just two people choosing each other every day. And in the end, that was the love that mattered most. Not the perfect one, the honest one, the end. Have you ever met someone at the wrong time and wondered what would have happened if they came back later? Tell us in the comments. I'd love to read your story.